joined the company in January of 2012. And we pretty much put our foot down and said, no LTO. We don't want to have a tape library. We don't have to keep changing tapes. We don't want to have to ship them to some mountain somewhere in Utah. And then when something breaks, bring them all back. So what we decided to do is try to use object storage. So I played with OpenStack Swift, the native code, back in, what release was it? S6?
Probably, yeah.
It was quite a while ago. And played with it and spun it up myself, and it worked. It was exactly what we expected it to do. We did have a missing piece. We have some legacy file system components. Our media asset management requires CIF shares, as terrible as that sounds. But I needed to be able to have this archive that would scale linearly and forever. So with the help of the SwiftStack guys, I was able to download that demo that I think we're going to use today. I had the thing running in 5 minutes. Whereas doing it natively, it took me hours and hours, and I was putzing around with it, and I couldn't get authentication to work, and I just started to rip out authentication because I just couldn't figure it out, and figured, I don't care, it's an internal thing. Theirs worked in 5 minutes, so I can vouch that it's really simple to set up. Next, I needed to bridge the gap between my legacy application that only spoke Windows file sharing and something that was new and innovative and scaled linearly. So I found this file system gateway from a company called Meldivica. So I could actually just take this piece, stick it between my legacy application and this awesome scalable cloud archive, or local cloud archive, and throw files in until the cows come home. So much so that we filled it up almost completely. The older versions of SwiftStack didn't necessarily give you that number that said you're at 98% full, but I was, and you don't want to get that full. So we, this past summer, expanded it by another 2 petabytes. So right now, total, our cluster is about 3 petabytes. It consists of 800 3 terabyte drives. We sized it from the beginning to be able to scale quickly. So I have 10 nodes. Originally had 35 disks in each node. Knew that I wanted to scale it and that this was not going to stop. We're not going to stop creating games and producing content. So I left SAS backplane expanders on every one of our nodes and just bought JBODs. So my second purchase was actually about half the cost of my first, but tripled my storage. That's the efficiencies of buying the disks when you need them instead of buying them all at once. I was able to just rack and stack 10 more JBODs, have 45 disks in each, and connect 2 cables. Never even rebooted the nodes. SwiftStack picked them up. I had a list of available additional drives, clicked select all, and then against what I will advise you to do, I clicked add immediately. You'll have that option, don't click it. Maybe in a small test environment, but I did it in production. And so we started to transfer all the data from the 98% full drives to the 0% full drives to try to balance it. At peak, we were moving about 5 gigabytes a second, which is, we're not a big cluster, but 5 gigabytes a second is a ton of data to be moving. To the point where we had
per node.
Per node. So we had to actually throttle everything down quite a bit. Yeah, with their help, I was able to unbreak my cluster. But
Scott, we tell that story in training, by the way.
Oh, good.
Don't ever do this. And
I have the graphs to prove it.
We don't name you by name, but we said we had a customer that did that.
You said I could, and he did actually say I could. He's like, you can do that. It's going to slow your node down. Note that we were in the middle of the summer. So PAC-12 produces events about 9 months of the year, and then all the student athletes go home. So we have 3 months to tear down, rebuild, expand. We replaced our core SAN this summer with an EMC VNX2 behemoth. We upgraded our Swift cluster. That's our time to do it. So I really didn't have any reason not to do it. This is not a user-facing thing. It's pure archive, and I was able to click the button and just let it run at full speed, literally full speed, for 5 days straight. And it did rebalance. And now we're in production again. You had a question?
So is each one of your nodes operating as a proxy?
No, we have 2 proxy nodes, and there are, I believe it's 1 load balancer points to 2 proxy nodes. So I've got a standalone HA proxy node that I just added because I found the performance was better to do it just on a separate node.
And do you keep all your account database and your container databases in the same storage cluster? Or
in the same storage cluster, yes, but not in the same node. So we have a 100 gig SSDs. So of the 35 disks, 1 of them is an SSD. Or actually, of the 36 possible, 1's an SSD. So there's 36 total, 1's SSD, that's my account and container node. And so there'll be 10 of those spread across the cluster. And I just looked, because you had mentioned that if you leave 1 to 4%, my 100 gig nodes, or 100 gig disks that have the account container information, have I think they're each less than 1% used. It's in 5 racks. So there's a huge thing about regions. I can give you a hint. Regionalize your data. We knew I was going to add them, so when I racked up my first main nodes, I left room below them and a space, because I like spaces in racks, for the JBOD that I would buy in a year or 2 years. So everything was already provisioned. We had our region set up. There's 5 regions, 2 nodes in each region, and a total of 160 disks per rack. And I'll note, when I deployed this, we didn't have this idea of geo-replication or regionalization, but we're looking very heavily to add that and add an entire another cluster and another data center on our campus network. At one of the universities, probably USC.
So you don't stream off this cluster?
No, this is pure archive, but the reason that we went with something that was open, and especially something like Openstack, this is our vault. This is our archive of everything that Pac-12 Networks has ever done. Any sporting event, any produced feature, B-roll, interviews. We keep everything. We delete nothing. We also burst into Amazon's public cloud, so that's actually our DR site. But the reason we want to do this is now if we ever decide to do a vault application and say, go watch any Pac-12 game from the last 60 years, this can be the source of that data because it's already there. And I don't have to pull it back from tape. I don't have to ask for someone to box them up from some mountain in Utah. It's all online and it's accessible through an API. Each rack has redundant power, so we have two rails and 2 feeders for every one of them, which is stuff you want to think about because we did end up losing one of our racks due to an overloaded circuit, and the cluster continued to hum just fine, losing 2 of its nodes and all requisite disks.
Are you running the default through replica?
Through replica. So that's our story. We're very excited and very happy with it. And if I wasn't, I would tell you. I'm one of those customers that's real honest. These guys have been great. Even when I break it, they help me fix it. So you can trust it. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, go Pac-12.
Thanks, Scott.